Okay, we will see how this is going to work, actually. I'm going to need to... no, I don't want that. Come back. Exit full screen. Okay. We're there. All right. So, our screen is reversed or corrected. All right, so I am doing this slightly differently this time, as you may have noticed from some of the bits and bobs that are hanging around. For those of you, I'm sure, I mean, it's not like we've got huge numbers of new people coming in all the time. So, hello, good to see you. I am Tad. I'm going to be reading, and I'm trying something new here because I've been having so many problems with the interface, the simplest interface. I have moved up to a slightly less simple interface. We will see what we will see as to whether this will work. So I am relying on all of you to let me know um, whether or not you can see and hear and all that. I realize the audio quality may not be as good as it has been other times. That is something I'll probably have to try and figure out. But the video quality, rather, not the audio quality, should be just the same as far as I know. So let me know if things are odd or different or whatever. Somebody mentioned that they've that they have that screen is flip flopped somehow. So I have no idea what that means. I guess it has. Anyway, hello. So where are my comments? Give me my comments. Give me my comments. That's not all the comments. Oh, God, are they doing this to me again? Okay. For some reason, that I'm looking at the comments on Facebook, and they seem to have ditched them somehow. So maybe my problem is just purely a Facebook problem. What do you think? All right. Let me see if I've got comments here, or if it's doing the same thing. All right, 18 comments. And so, oh, God bless me. I just want to see the comments not in some kind of weird ass order. Okay, anyway, we'll figure it out as we go here. I don't know why it was done the way it's done. I don't know why it won't just give me my comments. God bless America. We'll figure out why that is in a minute. Anyway, I may not be able to say hello to people tonight because Facebook is, doing something weird again with the comments for me. Okay, sorry. I'm just, as I said, there would be a little faffing around at the beginning of the project here. Why can't I read the comments? All right, I'm going to do this here. No, I don't want to see that. 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 Yeah, I'm still here. I'm still here. Oh. And I'm sorry, I'm just reading a few things here. Don't worry about it. I will be reading in just a moment. Why do they make it so difficult? I'm sure it's something that's meant to keep their usage low, but it does not explain exactly why to fix it. Oi. Anyway. Man. All right. Yeah, no, it's still doing this weird ass thing here, and I don't know why. I've got 20 comments, but it will only show me the last 4. Let's see if we can do anything different on Twitter. Well, Twitter wouldn't have them directly. Anyway, well, we'll worry about it later. As I said, I knew there was going to be some weird thing. between most recent and most relevant. I'm not even getting the ability to change between most recent and most. Let me see. Yeah, I'm not even getting the ability to ask between to change between most relevant and most. No, if I hit comments, it just disappears entirely. Oh yeah, 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 yeah. Okay, well, I'm not going to worry about it. I can only do so much at one time. And one of the reasons I tried this today was so I would know what I was going to be working on during the week to make it work properly. So, can't say exactly why it's doing what it's doing, and it makes it very hard. I saw comments from Penny and Kristen and Jeremy and probably several other people, and I say hello to all of you. But as to why it's doing what it's doing, I have no idea whatsoever. Oh, yeah, it has flip flopped. That's true. This is actually now coming directly out of the camera because that is my left, right? Yeah, that's my, I mean, yes, of course it's my, I know what my left is, but that's my left, which is how a camera would normally record it or would mirror it back. Anyway, we'll figure it out as we go. I have no idea why anything else is happening because this stuff is perpetually complicated on purpose, probably to reduce the amount of information Facebook has to move around. Um, but I don't know why it would want to do that in such a way that they actually hide the comments or hide the ability to change the comments. But anyway, we will figure it out as we go. I don't want. Who else is there? Margaret's there. Hello, Margaret. Hello, Mike. Hello, Ron. Not Highway Tad. Well, like I said, you never can tell. That may be my next movie when I finish making my western. I'll go on to my convoy movie. Okay. Well, anyway, at least I'm here. So I cannot say hello to people in the way that I would like, but I'll figure that out another time, I guess. Um, and that's actually, I don't think, been anything that's changed because of this. It's just even more complicated because of adding this on the top. We have a chat. Ah, oh, I've got it. I've got an actual chat. Ah, okay, good. I can say hello to people. So let me do that quickly before we disappear. I've got Medardo. Hello, Medardo. Lovely to see you. And there's Claudia. Hello, Claudia. Who else? Mahmoud. Good to see you too. Emily. Yes, Emily was the one who noticed that the screen was reversed. So, yes, that is absolutely true. And it has to do with the fact of the way that this particular restreaming service is working. So, we will figure it out as we go. You can tell me if you like it better with the grill over that shoulder. It doesn't really matter much to me one way or the other. That is, however, closest to how the room actually would look from the direction of the camera. And let's see who else is there. Ray is there. Hello, Ray. Good to see you. Kelly, good evening. Barb Ann, hello. Kristen. Oh, so Kristen has renamed me instead of, or has come up with her own version. Instead of me being Highway Tad, I am Taff. Hello, Kristen, though. It's good to see you. Jim Key, good eventide to you too, sir. Yeah, I saw you fixed it, Kristen. I'm just teasing. James, hello, James. Nice to see you. Tim, good to see you too. Who else have we got? Cliff, I think I already said hello to you before I could find the stream, but that's okay. Jeremy, yeah, it may be a little grittier. I think I can also up the quality, but again, I didn't have time because I just sort of checked a few things and then set this up. So we can probably have better quality in future. Anyway, but the comments do appear to be now visible to me. I had to go to the the streaming software, but they're showing them to me here. So that's all good. So Chris Van Dahl, good to see you. Jeremy, yes, everything is good here. And Mike, yes, hello, good to see you. And there's the folks I saw already. And Carl, hello. Facebook didn't tell you. Oh, probably because I didn't go directly from Facebook, but through this streaming platform. So I may need to think about that for the future as well. And who else we got? Sally, hello. Good to see you too. Caught you on the hop, I hear. It's good to see you. Okay, so that's where we're at. As far as things to update anybody on, last night I said the main thing that had happened is that we had eldest child's birthday. Well, eldest biological child's birthday. He is narrowly pipped to the post by his best friend who also lives with us. But of our biologicals, he is the older of the two. And as a part of the birthday celebration, we drove over the hill last night to a restaurant on the, as we say here in the San Francisco Bay Area, on the peninsula, which means the Silicon Valley side of the hills, whereas we are on the west side of the hills, facing out toward the ocean. And much merriment and food was had. And everybody got back okay. We are all healthy, as far as I know, at least physically healthy. Mentally and morally, that remains a question, but, we're doing okay. I have, as I also mentioned, shipped off the copy edited manuscript of Into the Narrow Dark, which has now, whatever the past tense of wended. It has went its way. It has wounded its way. I'm not sure, but whatever it is that is the past tense of to wend, it has done wended. And so now I'm just about to get back to intensive work on Navigator's Children. Let me think if there's anything else that I need to tell you guys about. Not really. Just working. Hunkered down as always in the night dark depths of the office here, although to call them night dark depths is absolutely ridiculous because one of the nice things about this is I've got windows all around, which you can't see, but on the far side of me, behind the computer and the desk and all this stuff, there's windows, albeit in need of some cleaning, but sliding glass doors, floor to ceiling on this side. So I get plenty of views of our outside, which is a very nice thing to do because, as I probably mentioned, since we live in the hills, we have all kinds of critters and things happening out there. So, we deer and lots of rabbits live on the property and all kinds of interesting birds. We get turkeys, wild turkeys, and of course the usual squirrels and voles and gophers and all that stuff, but the occasional raccoon and wild cats, and every now and then a coyote, although not in the daytime, obviously, not for coyotes or wildcats. The turkeys do. The turkeys think that they own this, and they're just letting us live here. So I have a very nice something to look at outside my window, although I try not to because I can very easily get distracted because, let's face it, working is no fun, even when you love your work, as I do. There are certainly times when you'd rather just stare at squirrels, or at least I would, So that's about it. So, let me see. I almost missed that. Mike's wife, Shannon, is had her birthday today. Well, congratulations, Shannon. Happy birthday. And Mike and the kids made brownies. Cool. The ability to rewind the stream seems to be missing, although maybe it will show up once the stream is over. Huh. I'll have to figure out about that. I think maybe. Okay, no, it's this. See, part of this is that I'm using this really basic version of this software because I wanted to find out if it would even be compatible and, et cetera, et cetera. So I just did the very most basic hookup possible. Didn't go for the more professional version, with presumably has more bells and whistles in terms of this stuff. So the as you're suspecting, there are probably things that are going on that are not going to be like they normally are. But however, I will do my best to bring them to you once I decide if this is the platform. No, not platform, but this is the streaming software that I want to use. So that's basically what is going on and what it all means. So back to the book, back to Otherland, City of Golden Shadow. when we had what we read last night until I had a weird crash and burn, which is why I decided to start looking at streaming software today. Although I'm not 100% certain it wasn't due to our ISP crashing on my end, or some other similar TAD side of things related fault. When I was reading last night, we were reading a chapter called The Deadly Tower of Senbar Flay. And yes, it's just as florid as you would imagine, because that part of the chapter takes place in the Middle Country, which was Orlando's old stomping grounds before his barbarian character Thargor was distracted by an image of a golden city. Yes, the titular golden city or city of Golden Shadow of the title of the volume. While distracted, Orlando's character was killed by a very low-level menace. And Orlando has been obsessed ever since then with finding out why this happened. And he spent a lot of time looking at the information and realized that somebody had not only done this to him, but somehow they had managed to hack into the Middle Kingdom's database and literally remove any trace of it from the adventure, I guess you'd say, that he was on. And so Orlando has become increasingly interested in, and one might even say obsessed with what happened to him and how something this strange could have occurred. And as a result, he has it was while he was on a quest for a character who called themselves within the game world the wizard Senbar Flay. And so Orlando took his friend Fredericks, and Orlando as Thargor, of course, the barbarian, and Fredericks in his Pithlet the thief persona, and went into Senbar Flay's tower, and were almost destroyed by a super impressive giant red griffin, which Orlando eventually managed to defeat. When they got inside, they found that basically the tower itself was largely inactive, that the sim of Senbar Flay was just inert. And then afterwards, they went back and Orlando began to do more research and discovered that, among other things, that there were a lot of questions about how this had happened and how this had come to be. So Orlando is now back in his real self in his home. And let me see if there's, I don't know exactly where we lost the thing here. So I'm going to start back a page and a half or so and just read. This is Orlando in his room at night after he's gotten offline from hanging around with Fredericks. And he's calling Beazle, his software agent, Beazlebug, who Orlando has said he's had since he was a kid. A couple of near-silent clicks indicated that Beazle was detaching his robot body from the power outlet, where it had been quietly sucking nourishment like a flea on a dog's back. The ring of red light slid down the wall and then came across the carpet at about shoe-top height. Orlando scrambled back to his pillows and got under the blanket again so he could enjoy the ticklishly amusing sensation of Beazle clambering up the bedclothes. He enjoyed it mostly because he was not so grown up as to have forgotten the slightly creepy way it had felt when he was a little boy. Beazle approached the pillow, humming and clicking as faintly as a cricket wrapped in a yard of cotton. He crawled onto Orlando's shoulder and adjusted for stability, rubber-tipped feet scrabbling to get a satisfactory grip. Orlando wondered if someday Beazles, or things like Beazle, would be able to move as freely in real life as they did in the virtual world. He had already seen news stories about agents with robotic bodies going feral because of bad programming in the infrastructures of buildings. Because of bad programming or aging software, escaping their owners to live like woodlice in the infrastructures of buildings. What would such things want out of life? Did they run away on purpose, or just lose the ability to follow their original programming and wander off into freedom? Did they retain vestiges of their original artificial personality? Beazle had settled with his speaker beside Orlando's ear, and now spoke so quietly as to be barely audible. "Better?"
That's fine. So tell me what you have. Which voiced? The Griffin. Well, first off, we don't know for sure when it was purchased, but everything else lines up with your guess. It was first introduced into the node after the shutdown order. So this kid Diller didn't buy it? Well, a call on the hospital databank says he's still there and still listed as comatose, so even if he bought it, he sure didn't install it. Where's it from?
Beazle readjusted in response to Orlando's small change of position. His Brooklyn cab driver accent continued to purr into his master's ear.
That's one of the strange things. It doesn't correspond exactly to anything. It's been customized from several different chunks of code. I think it did more than just perform its middle country duties, but it's too late now to go back and check. Maybe if you go back in, boss. I doubt it.
So you can't find out who bought it or who made it?
The chain of manufacturers messed up all to hell. I can't trace an unbroken line. Companies have gone out of business. Trademarks on some parts of it are held under what seem to be invented names, not in any indexes I can find anywhere.
If an agent in a robot body could sigh, Beazle would have sighed.
It's been hell, I'm telling you. But one thing keeps coming up.
Which is?
Treehouse.
At first, Orlando thought he had misheard Beazle's whisper.
You mean the place? Most of the invented names are hacker tags, and a lot of them show up in treehouse related material.
Wow.
Let me think.
Beazle sat patiently. Unlike his parents or Frederick's, you could tell Beazle to do something and he'd do it. He knew "let me think" meant don't talk. And if Orlando didn't prompt him to speak again, the robot would crouch silently in place until he had to crawl back to his socket to recharge. Orlando needed a few moments of quiet. He didn't quite know what to say. If this trail he seemed to be following led toward Treehouse, that was both exciting and extremely daunting. Exciting because Treehouse, often called the last free place on the net, was supposed to be an anarchistic hacker's paradise, an outlaw node that floated through the system like an illegal street corner craps game. Net gossip said that it was supported not by massive corporate structures like the other big nodes, but by an ever changing network of its residents' own small systems. It was supposed to be like a gypsy camp. The whole thing could be taken down in minutes, stored as small and widely distributed individual chunks, then fitted back together again equally swiftly. The daunting aspect was that nobody just went to Treehouse. It was pretty much invitation only. And since it had no commercial purpose and was, in fact, by its own governing principles, opposed to being useful in any meaningful way, those who found it usually wanted only to enjoy and help preserve its exclusivity. So, you couldn't just go to Treehouse like you could go to some other node. Being told that the answers to his questions might be discovered there was like telling a medieval peasant that he could find something in Cathay or Samarkand. For a teenager with no connections, if it wasn't actually mythical, it was still so unreachable as to be, in effect, purely imaginary. Treehouse. Excitement moved inside him, but something else fought for room beside it. Something he knew very well, although he had never felt it before about something on the net. Just like Fredericks, he was scared.
Beazle,
he said at last, are you sure?
Boss, please.
Beazle was old equipment, but he was an impressive piece of work. There was nothing artificial about his tone of scorn. Then get me everything you can on Treehouse. No, not everything. At least at first, you'd better just give me stuff with a reasonable believability weight. Information with multiple sources. We can decide whether we want to start hunting through the really scanny stuff later.
Even so, boss, it's gonna take a while.
I'll take whatever you've got in the morning. He remembered that tomorrow was an appointment day.
No, after lunch. I'll look at it, then decide. If you really want a thorough search by tomorrow, I better lose this body and get to it. Crawling around wastes an awful lot of bandwidth, you know.
Orlando made a face. One problem with hanging on to your childhood agent was that they tended to lecture you. Tell me something new. Go on, get out of here. The rubber-clad metal polyps riffled in sequence as Beazle backed away from his ear.
Good night, boss. Night, Beazle.
The agent made its laborious way down the blankets to the floor. Like cats, bugs found it easier to climb up than down. Orlando watched the faint gleam of red until it reached the wall outlet once more, socketed in, and turned off its display. Treehouse. It was so strange to think of that name in connection with something he, Orlando Gardner, was going to do. It was like deciding you were really going to fly to Never Never Land or go down a rabbit hole to look for Alice's friends. But it made sense in a weird way. If people existed who could hack into a system as sophisticated as the Middle Country, excise an entire 5 minutes or whatever it had been, then leave no trace, not only of who had done it, but that anything had even been done, they would be the kind of people who hung around in Treehouse. He sank down into the pillows, but he knew sleep would not come soon. There was so much to think about. Had he really found something unusual, something worth causing all this trouble over? Something worth taking so many risks? Or was it only that the vision of the strange city made him think about things he'd stopped considering? Fredericks would tell him he was getting carried away. Certainly data bombing someone's node was not a normal kind of thing to do. His parents would be horrified. A sudden thought made his neck go prickly. Orlando sat up. The idea was too uncomfortable to consider lying down. He had figured that only someone with access to the Middle Country records would ever know he had been in Senbar Flay's tower. He had even said so to Fredericks. But clearly, whoever had snipped out the sequence in the tomb and managed to suppress a shutdown order for half a year could walk in and out of the Table of Judgment's master files at will and do things to them that even their owners couldn't do. If that was the case, then whoever had rigged the whole thing in the first place could find out about Thargor's visit any time he or she wanted to. And the mystery hacker could find out about Thargor's creator with greater ease. Sour bile rose to Orlando's mouth with a kind of stupid self-confidence that would make any ordinary imaginary barbarian proud. He had as good as told this person, of near limitless skills and an obvious desire for secrecy, that there was a 14-year-old kid looking for him. Surely the whole thing was just the work of some extremely talented, slightly childish prankster. But if the city and the records fixing were indicative of something bigger, something far more illegal, he could only hope that his adversary had a really good sense of humor. Yoo-hoo, Mr. Big League Computer Criminal. It's me, Orlando Gardner. Drop by any time. I won't put up much of a fight. Hell, all someone would have to do is fiddle his medical records. The wrong dermal patch, and it would be Sayonara Irene. Treehouse. An image out of childhood, a place to escape the real world of grown-ups and rules. But who else liked to lurk beyond the edge of the playground, out of reach of authority? Bullies. Serious troublemakers. Bad guys. Eyes wide open, Orlando sat in the dark and listened to nothing. Chapter 17, A Call from Jeremiah. Netfeed, Sports. Caribe youth signs guinea pig contract. Visual, Bando playing dirt court basketball game. Voiceover. Solomon Bando, a 12-year-old Dominican boy, will become the first child to receive hormone treatments paid for and administered by a professional sports franchise.
Bando's family signed a contract with the Ensenada and VAC Clippers of the World Basketball Association that permits their son, chosen as an optimum specimen from several hundred applicants, to undergo a series of bodybuilding hormone treatments and bone grafts designed to help him reach an adult height of at least 7.5 feet. Visual, Roland Crinzy, Clippers vice president. Crinzy. We're building for the future, not just taking the short view. Our fans appreciate that. Renee fumbled with her packages, trying to juggle them into some kind of manageable arrangement. The bus wheezed and rolled slowly away on underinflated tires, off to deposit a few more souls on a few more corners, like a strange animal marking the circuit of its territory. The day had turned even hotter while she had been on the bus, although the sun was well down toward the horizon. She could feel sweat trickling down the back of her neck and along her spine. Before the fire, her stop had been only a few streets from her flat. Oh, I will interrupt briefly. For anybody who missed that section of the reading, Renee came back from visiting Dr. Susan Van Bleek to discover their apartment complex on fire. At first, she thought her father was dead, but then she found him, and that was the last we've seen of Renee or Long Joseph or any of those characters. Before the fire, her stop had been only a few streets from her flat, although that had always seemed a terrible trudge at the end of a working day. Only 2 weeks later, she was beginning to look back on the old days with nostalgic fondness. The streets of Lower Pinetown were full, as they usually were this time of the day. People of all ages lounged in doorways or on the front steps, gossiping with neighbors next door or even across the street, shouting something scurrilous so everyone who could hear was part of the fun. In the middle of the road, a group of young men were playing football, the contest watched closely by a pack of children who ran up and down the sidewalks as the progress of the match shifted from one end of the street to the other, and more casually by the audience on the stoops. Most of the players wore only shorts and battered tackies. As she watched their perspiration-slicked bodies move, listened to them laughing and shouting, Renee felt a deep, hollow craving for someone to hold her and love her. Waste of time, girl. Too much to do. One of the young men in the match, lean and shaven-headed, looked something like her old boyfriend, Del Rey, even had a little of his insolent grace. For a moment, he was there, in the street in front of her, even though she knew the boy who had captured her attention was years younger. She wondered what the real Del Rey was doing, where he was at this very moment. She hadn't thought of him in a while, and wasn't sure she was happy to be reminded. Had he gone to Johannesburg as he always swore he would? Surely nothing could have kept him from going into government and making his way up the ladder of respect. Del Rey had been very ambitious. Or was he still here in Durban, perhaps returning home from work to a waiting woman, to his wife, maybe? It had been at least 5 years since she'd seen him, time enough for anything to have happened. He might have children. For all she knew, he might be dead. She shivered a little and realized she had stopped in the middle of the sidewalk. The young man, who now raced ahead of the entire pack, dribbling the scuffed ball, flew past her. She saw a flash of gold in his grin of exertion. He didn't really look much like Del Rey. A group of small children swept past her like an ocean wave, following the young man who wasn't her old boyfriend as he hurtled toward the goal. She had to cling to her packages as the shrieking troop swirled by. Then she began walking again. A few hundred yards took her past the stoops and into the small and rather depressing shopping district. A dress in a window caught her eye. She slowed. The pale fabric had a strange sheen, and the slanting sunlight seemed to move across it unevenly. It was odd, but somehow striking, and she stopped to look more closely. It had been a long time since she'd bought herself any clothes that weren't practical. She shook her head with a small sense of triumphant martyrdom.
If there was ever a time when she needed to save her money, when she couldn't afford something just because it would make her feel nice, now was that time. A movement in or behind the reflection caught her eye as she turned back to the sidewalk. For a moment she thought it was someone in the shop window, but when she moved to a different angle, she could see the window was empty but for mannequins. Something had moved quite close behind her. She whirled, but saw only a bit of dark clothing disappearing down a side street a dozen yards away. Just the other side, walking away from Rini on the sidewalk, two young women were looking back over their shoulders with faintly puzzled expressions as though watching whoever it might have been. Rini had readjusted her bag and walked a little more purposefully. It was not as if it were after dark or she were the only person on the street. A small crowd stood in front of the corner market just 100 steps ahead, and there were at least a half dozen people closer to her than that. She might well be in some kind of trouble, but it was dangerous to start believing that people were following you. As she waited to cross the street, she casually turned and looked back. A rangy man in a dark shirt and metal-framed sunglasses was staring fixedly into the dress shop window. He did not meet her eyes or show any sign that he even knew she existed, but she still felt a kind of attention emanating from him. Perhaps she was jumping at shadows. Then again, that was what they called it when somebody followed somebody, wasn't it? Shadowing? It is dangerous to believe that people are following you, but maybe it's dangerous to disbelieve it too. She went into the market on the corner, even though she'd already done her shopping near the Poly, where the better stores were. When she came out with a soft drink in her hand, there was no sign of the man in the dark shirt. The shelter had been a truck depot, and it still retained its former sense of intimacy and warmth. The 12-meter-high ceilings gaped in places where the cheap corrugated fibramic didn't quite meet. The floor was concrete, still blackened in places with ancient oil stains. The Greater Durban Social Welfare Department had done what it could, mostly with volunteer labor. The huge space had been hived with fiberboard partitions, across which curtains could be hung, and a wide carpeted common area in one corner held a wall screen, a large gas fire, dartboards, and an old billiards table. But the building had been converted hastily in the wake of the flooding 3 years before and hadn't been modified since. At the time, it had been meant only as temporary housing for those displaced from the lower townships. But after the overspill had receded, the local government had kept the building. They hired it out between the fairly infrequent emergencies for dances and political rallies, although it had a core population that had never found other homes. Keeping the shelter had not meant being able to improve it, though. Rini wrinkled her nose as she walked across the open area near the front door. How could a place that was so drafty in cold weather hold in the heat and stink so effectively during the summer? She dumped her packages in the 4-by-3-meter booth, which was their temporary home. Her father wasn't there, but she had not expected him to be. She pulled the tab on a cigarette, kicked off her shoes, then pulled the curtain closed so that she could take off her work clothes and keep them relatively clean. When she had changed into shorts and a loose-fitting shirt, she put the groceries in the tiny refrigerator, set the kettle on the hot plate, stubbed her cigarette, and went off to search for Long Joseph. He was over by the wall screen with the usual bunch of men, some his age, some younger. They were watching a football match being played on green grass somewhere, a contest between well-paid professionals in one of the commercial sports ground neverlands that only existed on broadcasts. She couldn't help thinking about the real game in the street only a short distance away. What brought young men, those young men, in out of the sunshine and turned them into the only slightly older ones here? Slow of speech but quick to argue, shallow swimming, content to sit and nurse a few beers through a long afternoon in a steamy warehouse. How could men start out so strong, so vital, and then turn so sour? Her father looked up at her approach and, in guilty reflex, attempted to hide his beer. She ignored it.
I'm making some coffee. I'm making some coffee, Papa. Then we have to go see Stephen.
He sneaked a quick look down at the bottle held against his leg. It was almost empty. The other men were watching the screen intently. Rini had heard a colleague say that men were like dogs. If so, it was never more apparent than when they watched the movement of a ball. Long Joseph swallowed the last mouthful, then put it down on the concrete with a defiant flourish.
I'd come. Got to see the boy.
As they walked back across the broad expanse, Rini thought she saw the man in the dark shirt again, this time silhouetted in the front doorway, but it was hard to be certain with the light streaming in from behind him. She pushed down a surge of unease. Even if it were him, that didn't mean anything. There were almost 500 people living in the shelter, and many more who just came in during the day to hang around. She knew only the few dozen other refugees from their burned flat block. She looked again when the light wasn't in her eyes, but couldn't see him anymore.
It used to be good,
Her father said suddenly.
every day. Good to do it.
What?
When I was working, when I was an electrician. Finish up, put down the tools, stop with my friends and have a drink. Good to be finished. But then my back got hurt.
Rini said nothing. Her father's back injury had occurred, or at least he claimed it had occurred, in the year after the death of her Uma Bongela, her grandmother, who had been the children's caretaker after their mother's death in the store fire. Long Joseph's injury had also coincided with his much greater interest in drinking, and in his coming back so late from his social evenings that Rini had usually taken her baby brother into bed with her to quiet his crying. She had always had her doubts about his back injury. Unless he had been bowed down so long by hard work piled on hard work, and then by the added, almost impossible burden of losing wife and mother-in-law and being left as sole parent to two young children, that he had just reached a point where he could not straighten up any more. That, too, could be called a back injury of sorts.
You could still do it, you know.
What? He was distracted, staring out into the middle distance as he walked.
Be an electrician. God knows there's lots of people with problems around here. I bet they'd love to have you help them.
He gave her a quick, angry look before staring ahead again.
My back. Just don't do anything that will make it worse. I'm sure there are lots of other things you could do. Half the people in this building have their power outlets overloaded. Old wires, bad appliances. You could go around and have a look. Goddamn girl, if you want to get rid of me, just say it to me.
He was suddenly furious, his hands clenched into fists.
I'm not going round begging people for jobs. Trying to tell me my monthly payment isn't enough?
No, Papa. In his early 50s, he was becoming a querulous old man. She wanted to touch him, but didn't dare.
No, Papa. It was just an idea. I'd just like to see you make myself useful. I'm useful to me, girl. Now you mind your own business.
They walked in silence back to their space. Long Joseph sat down on the bed and conducted a long, critical examination of his slippers, while Rini made 2 cups of instant coffee. When the tablets had finished effervescing, she passed one to her father.
Can I ask you something else, or are you going to be in a bad mood all evening?
He looked at her over the rim of his cup.
What? What did the man look like in front of our flat block? Remember? The one you saw waiting in the car that night when Kabu came over?
He shrugged and blew on his coffee.
How do I know? It was dark. He had a beard, a hat. Why do you want to know that?
The man shadowing her had been beardless, but that proved nothing. Anyone could shave.
I'm worried, Papa. Papa, I think there might be someone following me. He scowled. What nonsense is this? Following you? Who? I don't know, but I think I may have upset somebody. I've been looking into what happened to Stephen, doing some research on my own. Long Joseph shook his head, still frowning. What kind of silliness you talking, girl? Who following you? A crazy doctor? No. She wrapped her hands around her own cup, strangely glad of the warmth, despite the hot day. I think something happened to him because of the net. I can't explain, but that's what I think. That's why I went to see my old teacher. What good that old white witch do you? Damn it! Papa, I'm trying to talk to you. You don't know anything about Dr. Van Bleek, so just shut up. He made a motion as if to rise, sloshing his coffee. Don't you dare get up. I'm talking to you about something important. Now, are you going to listen to me? I'm not the only relative Stephen has, you know. He's your son, too. And I'm going to him tonight. Long Joseph was full of wounded dignity, despite the fact that it was only his fifth visit, and all of them at Reenie's strenuous urging. But he had settled back now, pouting like a scolded child. She told him as much as she could, leaving out the more arcane bits of speculation and avoiding entirely the story of her last hour in Mr. J's. She was too old and far too independent to be forbidden to do what she was doing, but she could not ignore the possibility that he might decide to protect her from herself, perhaps by damaging her pad or other equipment after a few drinks reminded him he was partly descended from warrior Zulus. She could carry on with her investigation from work if she had to, but she had already involved the Polly more than she liked, and she was also far behind on work because of her illness. Long Joseph was oddly quiet after she finished her explanations. I'm not surprised you almost kill yourself, working all day and then running around with all that other mess, he said at last. That sounded like a lot of craziness to me. Something in a computer made the boy sick? I never heard of that. I don't know. I'm just telling you what I've been thinking about and doing. I have no proof, except one very blurry picture of a city, she thought, but only because I took my pad with me to Susan's, only because I wasn't at home when that fire happened. As if hearing her thoughts, her father abruptly said, You think somebody came and set a flat on fire? I don't know. I don't want to think it's that serious. I've been assuming it was just a normal fire, an accident. 'Cause if you've been messing with the wrong people, they'll burn you out. I know about that girl. I seen it happen. Long Joseph stretched out his legs, staring at his stockinged feet. Despite his height, he suddenly seemed very small and very old. He leaned down, grunting softly as he felt on the floor for his shoes. And now you think someone following you? Maybe. I don't know. I just don't know anything right now. He looked up at her, sullen and a little frightened. I don't know what to say either, Irene. I hate to be hoping that my daughter is crazy in the head, but I don't like that other idea very much. He straightened up, captured shoes in his hand. Let me put these on, then we'd better go see that boy. After the visit, she led her father to the changing room so he could take off his end suit, then carefully changed her own, folding it before dropping it into the chute marked for the purpose. When she had finished, she walked to the restroom, sat down on the toilet, and cried. It started modestly, but within a few moments she could barely catch her breath. Her nose was even running, but she didn't care. He was there, somewhere. Her Stephen, the little baby boy with the surprised eyes who used to crawl into her bed, was there,
somewhere inside that body. The lights on the machines, the monitors on his skull, all the instrumentation of modern medicine, or as much of it as was available in the Durban outskirt medical facility, declared that he was not brain dead. Not yet. But his limbs were more contorted every day, and his fingers had curled into tight fists despite the physical therapy. What was that horrible, horrible phrase? Persistent vegetative state, like a shriveled root. Nothing left but something stuck in the ground, darkly motionless both inside and out. She couldn't feel him. That was the most horrifying thing. Kabu had said his soul was somewhere else. And although it was the sort of spiritualist homily that she usually nodded at while remaining privately scornful, she had to admit she felt the same way. The body was Stephen's, and it was still alive, but the real Stephen was not in it. But what was the difference between that and a persistent vegetative state? She was tired, so tired. The more she ran, the more she felt stuck in the same place, and she did not know where she would find the strength to keep running. At times like this, even a death as terrible as her mother's seemed a blessing by contrast. At least there was rest and peace for the victim, and some kind of release for the mourning family. Renee pulled down a hank of industrial rough toilet paper and blew her nose, then took some more and wiped her eyes and cheeks. Her father would be getting restless. The kind of old magazines lying around the waiting room were not the kind of magazines that would keep his attention. Why was that? Were hospital magazines only ever provided by kindly little old ladies? The scarcity of sports news or semi-naked women showed that the reading material was never selected by men. She dabbed at her face a little more as she stood in front of the mirror. The smell of disinfectant was so strong, she thought her eyes would start watering all over again. That would be perfect, she thought sourly. Work hard to look like you haven't been crying, then come out of the toilet with your eyes streaming anyway. She gave her lashes a last defiant blot. Her father had indeed become restless, but he had found something to do. He was annoying a nicely dressed woman, only a little older than Renee, who had slid all the way down to the end of the couch to avoid Long Joseph's attentions. As Renee approached, her father scooted a little way nearer. A terrible ruckus, you see. Fire trucks, helicopters, ambulances. He was recounting the fire at their flat block. Renee smiled a little, wondering if by showing up she'd spoiled the story of how he'd carried out all those women and children by himself. Come on, Papa, she began, then recognized the woman as Patricia Mawete, Soki's mother. They had not spoken since the disastrous conversation when Stephen's friend had fallen abruptly into seizure. Oh, hello, Patricia, she said politely. Papa, this is Soki's mother. Sorry I didn't recognize you at first. The other woman regarded her face, undoubtedly still tear-stained despite her best efforts, with a curious mixture of fear and uncomfortable sympathy. Hello, Irene. Nice to meet you, Mr. She nodded carefully toward Long Joseph, obviously not yet sure that he wasn't going to come sliding farther down the couch toward her. Renee paused for a moment, uncertain of what to say. She wanted to ask why Patricia was here, but the curious, almost superstitious courtesy of hospital waiting rooms didn't permit it. We've been visiting Stephen, she said instead. How is he? Renee shook her head. Just the same. They make you wear a foolish damn suit, Long Joseph offered. Like my boy had the fever or something. It's not for that, Renee began, but Patricia interrupted her. Soki's in for tests. 3 days, 2 nights. Just routine. She said that last defiantly, as if daring Renee to tell her otherwise. But he gets so lonely I come see him after work. She lifted a package. I brought him some fruit, some grapes. She seemed about to cry herself. Renee knew that Soki's troubles had not been either as mild or temporary as Patricia had claimed during their last meeting. She wanted to ask more, but didn't think it was the right time. Well, give him my best. We'd better be going. I've got a long day tomorrow. As her father began the apparently complicated process of standing up, Patricia suddenly put her hand on Renee's arm. You're Stephen, she said, then stopped. The look of controlled worry had slipped. A mask of terror peeped through. Yes? Patricia swallowed and wavered a little, like someone about to faint. Her formal business clothes seemed the only thing keeping her upright. I just hope he gets better, she finished lamely. I just hope they all get better. Long Joseph was already heading for the exit. Renee watched him a little anxiously, as if he too were a troubled child. Me too, Patricia. Don't forget to say hello to Soki for me, okay? Patricia nodded her head and settled back on the couch, feeling for a magazine on the table without looking. She wanted to tell me something, Renee said as they waited for the bus. Either that or she wanted to ask me something about Stephen. What are you talking about? Her father prodded a discarded plastic bag with the toe of his shoe. Her boy, Soki. Something happened to him, too, while he was on the net. Like Stephen, I saw him having a fit afterward. Long Joseph looked back toward the hospital entrance. Her boy in a coma, too? No. Whatever happened, it was different. But his brain was affected, I know it. They sat side by side in silence until the bus pulled up. When her father was settled into his seat, he turned to her. Somebody should find those net people, make them answer. Somebody should do something. I am doing something, Papa, she wanted to say, but Renee knew that she was not the kind of somebody he had in mind. It was dark. Even the stars barely shone, faint as mica chips in black sand. The only light in all the universe, it seemed, was the small fire burning within the circle of stones. She heard voices and knew that she was listening to her own children, and yet in some way they were also a tribe of strangers. A band that traveled through unimaginable lands. Kabu was one of them, and although she could not see him, she knew he was sitting beside her, one of the thin murmur of invisible souls. A greater darkness lay on the distant horizon, the space it occupied, the only part of the sky that contained no stars. It was a vast triangular shape, like a pyramid, but it stretched up impossibly high, as though they sat close to its base. As she stared at the great shadow, the voices around her murmured and sang. She knew that they were all aware of that tall, dark mass. They feared it, but they also feared to leave it behind. This, the only familiar thing in all the night. What is it? She whispered. A voice that she thought was Kabu's answered her. It is the place where the burned one lives. On this night he comes. We have to run away. She suddenly knew that something was moving out beyond the firelight, something that lived in darkness, the way fish lived in water. They were being stalked by something vast and tenebrous, and in all the twilit universe the only uncorrupted light came from the flames of this small fire. But he will only take a few, the voice said. The others will be safe, only a few. No, we can't let him have any of them. She reached out, but the arm she clutched turned insubstantial as smoke. The murmuring grew louder. Something was coming nearer, something huge that rattled the trees and stones, that hoarsely breathed. She tried to pull her friend back, but he seemed to come apart in her hands. Don't! Don't go! Old night itself was coming down on them, the jaws of darkness stretching wide. And I think that's where we're going to stop. Um, yeah, we lost the signal. On 3 times on my end, the the broadcast, not the broadcast, but basically my screen got to the point of like, okay, nothing's happening. And unlike with Facebook or something, when I'm just reading, it didn't register anything as going on. So it absolutely, um, just, as it does when a screen gets, when computer gets left alone for too long, it just flicked off. And then of course I had to move the mouse around to get it to come back again. So if you were losing signal for a moment, that's another clue of something I have to work on. So anyway, apologies for that. Thank you for letting me guinea pig you. I hope I will have figured out stuff and maybe even moved up to a more professional grade streaming, the more professional grade version of the streaming software or something. It seems to work otherwise okay. So, but anyway, so with that, there's a lot of intense stuff. We're very close to the point. Isn't it funny with my books? I like to start slow and set the world up, but the roller coaster ride is just about to start now. So, I know some of you who are familiar with these books already know them. Those who aren't, yes, I know that there's not that many scary things and exciting things that are happening yet. But trust me, it takes a little while, but we're now getting to the point where things are going to start blowing up big time. I don't know why I feel compelled to say that. I suppose it's having known for years that one of the things about my writing that sometimes bugs people is that I take a while to get into stories, largely because I like to. I think I was very affected by the Lord of the Rings and by the idea that in fact, a lot of the Lord of the Rings, the issue may have actually been that Tolkien himself didn't know what was going on, which is not usually what's happening with me when I'm writing. But I like the setup. I like getting to know the world before things start to happen, especially when it's a fantastical world, a fantasy world, a science fiction world. Anyway, enough babbling. I will be back next Sunday at 1 a.m. my time, California time. And then again at this slot, 7 p.m., we should have some of the technical problems more comprehensively handled by then. In the interim, I urge you all to take good care of yourselves, take good care of your friends and family, and the folks around you who may need some help. I will continue to try and do the same with my loose amalgam of strange offspring and pets. And I will see you next Sunday when I come back. So cheers, peace, be good. Thank you all for joining me.